Is it wrong to address personal hygiene to an opponent? Yeah, sure, why not? Let's talk about this. So today, we're not just covering the question that I opened up with, we're going to be talking about a handful of questions from the Magic the Gathering community. Now, none of these are aimed directly at me, but I think we should still be able to have plenty of fun with them regardless. Let's see what we have up first. This one comes from Potential Head, and it says, turn 1, discard, turn 2, reanimate. I have now seen this on YouTube many times, show matches where someone turn 1 draws a card, then discards a card due to hand size without playing anything, not even playing a land, and then turn 2 plays a swamp and casts reanimate on the big creature that they discarded on turn 1. My question is, would you ever do this in a normal Commander game? I imagine if the creature's big enough, it might be worth it, but negative ramp a whole turn, and how impactful the discarded creature has to be. Okay, how down bad do I have to be to give up my turn 1 land and be a turn behind everybody else for the rest of the game? Typically, if my hand opens up with like a Sheoldred Whispering one or an Archon of Cruelty, I'll probably feel perfectly fine doing that. Here's my risk-reward analysis on this for me personally. Cards like Sheoldred and Archon of Cruelty can spin a game in your favor very, very quickly. And if my opponents decided, for some reason, in their first hands, that between the three of them, none of them would keep any removal whatsoever, or the removal they have in their deck costs so absurdly high of a mana cost that they cannot use it, then that simply is not my fault. And if I do lose my creature, or I get Bajuka Bogged, or I get like Relic of Progenitus, anything at all, Scrabbling Claws in Glissa decks, any method of either graveyard removal or removal of my creature, I'm basically set back so far the entire game that I really screwed myself. It's a risk-reward scenario, and I think it's entirely fine to engage in that risk-reward scenario. On the one hand, you can get mad that I got an Archon out really early. On the other hand, what's the major difference between me doing that on turn 2 versus me doing it on turn 3 when I use a Merfolk Looter? Because, like, that's the other way that I would be doing this, is turn 1 land, turn 2 Merfolk Looter, turn 3 discard Archon of Cruelty, play reanimate. It's not that different from doing this on turn 2. The only difference is that if I do this on turn 2, I'm giving up a land, and I feel like me punishing myself that hard for the risk of getting this out is just well worth it. It's worth it to me, and if you kill it, then I was the threat for all of 2 seconds, and now I'm behind a land, behind everybody until I've ramped myself not once, but twice. Looking through the comments, there's a few people who point out that, look, what if somebody else reanimates him first? And yeah, that's a good point. I've ran into this problem where I'm playing the reanimator deck, and there just happens to be another reanimator deck at the table, and they go, oh, that's so cool. You have your thing in the graveyard? What if I just yoinked it myself? Like, yeah, okay, that's fair. Now, there are points in time where I will choose not to do this. Like, let's say that I have Jin-Gitaxi's Core Augur in my hand, and I'm planning on doing the reanimate thing here. Now, everything I said goes out the window. Why? Because Jin-Gitaxi's Core Augur directly removes your opponent's agency. Completely. You see, if I have something like Sheoldred, or I've got an Archon of Cruelty, these are cards that are oppressive but manageable. But if Jin-Gitaxi's Core Augur takes out everybody's hands in the beginning of the game, even if they had removal in their mulligan, by the time they have the 2 or the 3 mana to get rid of the Jin, it doesn't matter, because they can't ever have the removal and also the mana in the same hand. They have to dig super hard to get these. So, like, in instances where this is in my hand, then no, I won't do that play, because that just feels like the kind of play that instantly makes us all scoop up to go to the next game. Cards like Sheoldred and Archon, very powerful, game warping, easy to play around. Cards like Jin-Gitaxi's Core Augur, not easy to play around in the slightest, especially that early in the game. So I guess there's my caveat. I would not do this for Jin, I would do this for Archon and Sheoldred. Next question is, can I cast my 7-mana Temur Commander on turn 3? Why, yes, you can. The question actually is, why the hell do you need to do that? If we're in brackets 1, 2, or 3, in what world do you need 7 mana on turn 3? How is that even reasonable? How is that a thing that you are saying that you need? Okay, let's look for context. Let's see what's going on here. So I've built a budget Ureni deck, which currently aims to use a 2-mana ramp spell on turn 2, a 4-mana ramp spell on turn 3, and then the commander on turn 4. This works fine, but decks in my pod are pretty fast. How fucking fast are the decks in your pod? What is going on there? Oh my god, this works fine, but the decks in my pod are pretty fast, so only doing my first non-ramp action on turn 4 can make me lag behind. How is 2 free dragons lagging behind on turn 4? What decks are you lagging behind? Fucking Azula Storm? The only way for me to either get my commander out on turn 3 or allow myself to put down a strong enchantment on turn 3 is Soul Ring. Just playing Mana Dorks doesn't really help unless I'd open 4 of them, since Kadama's Reach style cards still only ramp by 1. Is there a way to sometimes get my 7-mana Temur commander on turn 3 besides Soul Ring without resorting to super expensive cards like Lion's Eye Diamond and the like? Or should I just play a different deck against faster decks? Again, first of all, why the fuck are the decks in your pod so obnoxiously fast? This is something that you need. Secondly, I got you, fam. Give me a minute. All right, since you seem to be afflicted with a speed racer style psychopathy, then let me introduce you to something you already said you didn't want to have to talk about, which is Mana Dorks. Cards like Llanowar Elves and cards like Birds of Paradise are going to be your best friends in terms of speed, but we have one other tool in our repertoire. Can I introduce you to cards like Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl? If you have a Wild Growth or Utopia Sprawl early, then you can definitely push ahead super far and super fast. You mentioned that a Soul Ring is one of your methods of doing this, and again, I don't see why you need this level of speed. Like, I do not get it, but fine, let's find inexpensive cards that will allow you to do this. Now, I don't know what your definition of inexpensive is, so let's say that $25 is going to be the most expensive thing we'll talk about here, and in that case, we got to talk about cards like Lotus Petals. So, Lotus Petals, Elvish Spirit Guide, Simian Spirit Guide, and Mana Dorks. Using these, we can get you to casting your commander super quickly, but let me also introduce you to Itali's best friend, the Ritual. Desperate Ritual, Seething Song, cards like this that convert a little mana into a lot of mana will get you there way faster than anything else. So let me lay out a scenario for you, one that does not include a Soul Ring. If you open up with a land and then you use that land to tap for a Wild Growth, and then in your next turn, you cast something like Nature's Lore or 3 Visits, then not only are you going to have 2 mana available, because the Nature's Lore and 3 Visits get you the land untapped, but you will also be up even more mana. You have 4 mana available at this point. Go ahead and use a couple of those pieces of mana to either cast Utopia Sprawl style cards, or Birds of Paradise style cards, or whatever you happen to need. Hell, you could even use the 3 mana that you have available to use a Nature's Lore, and then that would give you 2 mana, and then use that 2 mana to play a 3 Visits, and then use the 1 mana from the 3 Visits to put a Wild Growth or Utopia Sprawl or play a Dork on another card. And then on the turn that you need to summon your commander, on turn 3, you will have 4 or 5 mana available, not counting the land you play. And then you just play a Seething Song or a Desperate Ritual to get yourself there. And if not those cards, a Lotus Petal. And if not those cards, an Elvish Spirit Guide. And if not those cards, a Simian Spirit Guide. The point is, there's a ton of different ways you can use to get here, but the real question that I have is, what the fuck kind of pod are you playing in where you desperately need to get a 7 mana commander out that replaces itself immediately on turn 3. I feel like the natural way that the arms race of pods go is that if you try to lean super hard into cards like this, if you lean into stuff like this in order to make your deck as fast as humanly possible because you just can't keep up with the other decks around you, you're ultimately going to end up contributing to a massive arms race where even this level of speed will no longer be appropriate, and you will just be ramming yourself head fucking first into CEDH. As of this moment, by recommending these cards, I am effectively suggesting that your deck move out of bracket 2 and 3 and into bracket 4, because only bracket 4 is running at this level of goddamn speed. But you did ask for ways you can get there that don't involve super expensive cards like Lion's Eye Diamond, and these are the ways that you would do it. You would use rituals, and you would use the spirit guides, you would use Lotus Petals, and you would use the myriad of mana dorks, because there are so many, and I mean so many mana dorks you have access to at 1 mana. Not only do you have access to pseudo rituals like Mana Vault, but we're not really counting those because they are well over the Lotus Petal threshold. You've got Llanowar Elves, you've got Gilded Goose, Elvish Mystic, Boreal Druid, Bindhorn Elves, Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling, and then, of course, the 1-mana guys like Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl, and you even have access to Overgrowth, a 3-mana ramp spell that nets you 2 mana instead of 1 mana like the Kadama's Reach. And if you happen to use this on a land you haven't tapped yet, you can then use that mana from that land to cast more of any of the fucking cards I've talked about. Again, I don't see why you would need this level of speed, but it is completely achievable at a decent budget that is not quite Lion's Eye Diamond. The next one comes from GunsoulTwitch.tv. Oh, I guess they're a streamer? Maybe I'll check them out. They said, "Hey fam, I have a handful of decks that I rotate between, but I keep hearing build Grixis, it suits you so much. I am someone who likes control without necessarily playing counters. I like being mean, but I don't play stacks or discard types of decks. Also, I am trying hard to do no infinites and no tutors. In terms of combo, I try to really avoid that, but I'll sometimes run something like Rite of Replication or Kokosho together because that burns everybody for a lot. As I'll do things with 3 to 4 silly different cards. I love RNG. And different interactions, currently building Halden and Paco for that reason. So something like Aristocrat is pretty meh in my eyes. I also have Sephiroth built, wanting to avoid graveyard decks too, as I already have 2 built. My pod plays different stuff. One runs a high bracket 3 Dragon, Atraxa, etc. deck. One runs a token one that aims to set up a win by turn 6 or 8. The other plays stacks. What commander would you guys recommend? I have exactly who you need. You like Grixis and Random Chance? Then you need Abaddon the Despoiler, a creature that's a 5/5 with trample, so he usually gets in and does his damage, and during your turn, all spells you cast from your hand with mana value X or less gain Cascade, where X is the total amount of life your opponents have lost this turn. Double check me on the rulings for this, but I believe this also means cards you cast that already have Cascade will now have Cascade. So if you like Random Chance, if you like gambling, and if you want a commander that is Grixis, that is not Reanimator, not combo, not discard, not any of that shit, then Abaddon the Despoiler is exactly who you are looking for. In fact, looking at him, he seems like he's going to be super fun, so maybe I'll actually make a video on him and make that the deck that I do for either Monday or Tuesday's video. I don't know. Let me know in the comments section what you think, but I'm going to need some time to test him because decks like this can either be super fun or just kind of dirtle and do nothing. So I'm going to need a few days to actually test this thing to make sure that it does what I want it to do before I show y'all it at all. I don't want to ever be that channel that like makes decks so fast that they can't actually test them properly first. There was a time like really early in my channel where I was basically assuming things would work, and then y'all had the great suggestion of saying, hey, why not show a gameplay focus area of the video? And that basically forced me to test decks even more thoroughly than I did before to make sure that I could get good footage. So now I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm willing to build this. I actually think I should. So if you guys want me to build that, let me know in the comment section below. And hell, Gunsoul, if you happen to be a viewer of my videos, I don't know why you would. That seems like a really poor decision in life. But if you do, then yeah, maybe I'll just make a $20 version of this deck and we'll see what we end up coming up with. The next one is, which commander would you choose to have fun in a casual and non-competitive setting? I feel like that's most of them. Like that's just kind of like that's the game. Brackets 1, 2, and 3, right? Like that's kind of what it is. I feel like most commanders fall into that category pretty well. It depends on how you build the 99s around them, but sure, let's see what the context is. Last time I went to my local Magic Center and played with people I know, there was a guy that I had never seen before. That's always a red flag. And he used a competitive commander deck. He won in 3 turns, and the game just didn't feel like it was fun due to this, since we weren't there to compete. Okay, I've had that experience. That's the CEDH player or CEDH-minded player who can't find a CEDH pod. They find themselves in the pod with all of you. Sometimes it's a deck that just happens to pop off really quickly. And then he says, so from the cards I saw, he was playing with at least $1,000 invested in his deck. Again, $1,000 in a deck doesn't make a deck good. Like, I can build a garbage deck that just has a couple duels in it, and suddenly that's a $1,000 deck. So I do not know what the specific cards were that led to this scenario. But anyway, I'm analyzing a hypothetical writing prompt at this point. So the guy says, I am now, or the guy being Uktabi Bananas, I am now thinking of creating a deck with just Griffins. My understanding is that I don't want to use a deck that will frustrate people, but basically make the game fun even if I lose. Which commanders do you think would work in a casual setting? I currently have a Kibo and a Kess set, Kess Dissident Mage? Kess Dissident Mage, not in CEDH. Okay, fair enough. The Kibo is the only one that's somewhat competitive because I use cards that double the tokens and then steamroll my opponents when I'm lucky. The Kess is more easygoing, but I crave something more casual. Any ideas? What commanders would you recommend? So that's a broad category. So I'll throw 3 commanders at you that can be built at various powers, and it's up to you to make the 99 how you will. I'm going to start off with my absolute favorite commander of all time, Sephris of the Hidden Ways. Now, Sephris is a deck that can be built at basically any power level. It just depends on what you want to reanimate in the deck. It is a dungeon deck. It is very easy to disrupt. All you have to do is be willing to get rid of the things that are triggering the dungeon. And as a deck, you could just build it with D&D flavor if you want. You can make it an actual like D&D necromancer doing your thing, triggering the dungeon stuff and reanimating little things that also get you into the dungeon. And if you decide you really like that, you could just build a higher power version of the deck if you so choose. But the deck's power is going to be entirely based on what you are willing to put into it. So I think this would be a very good floor because the commander is not the most powerful thing in the world. I will say she is probably the strongest reanimator commander if you are building her correctly. But again, it's a reanimator deck. It's a reanimator deck built around dungeons. It's only ever going to be as strong as the little dumb dudes you put in there to reanimate. Next one I would suggest is Jasmine, Boreal of the Seven. She is a mana dork in her own right, and she allows you to have unblocked creatures with no abilities. And I'm going to be honest, what's more casual than running a deck that's win condition is trying to beat your opponent to death with a craw worm? When somebody asks what this does, you just say, the most terrifying thing about the craw worm is probably the horrible crashing sound it makes as it speeds through the forest. This noise is so loud that it echoes through the trees and seems to come from all directions at once. And when they go, that doesn't tell me what the card does, you respond, I told you what the card does. It crashes through the forest like a big, dirtily dumb dude. The last one I would suggest would be Itali Primal Storm. Now, Itali is an interesting choice. He technically gives you access to all kinds of free spells, but those cards are only going to be as good as what your opponents have on top of their deck, and he has a lot of chances to whiff. This guy is prime time casual in my mind. It's a deck that is entirely based around letting the commander do its thing, get out and try to swing and get its ability off, and it can be blocked, it can be stopped, it can be stifled. There's all kinds of things people can do. They can get rid of your haste enabler so that it can't swing and then knock it out with removal. Like, the commander itself is gonna fold to most basic ass strategies, but when it goes off, you're gonna have a ton of fun. So this would be my pick as well. Like, all of these are my pick, but this commander, I think you could build really, really fun at any budget. You know what? I'm going to build an Itali deck on a budget and see what I can come up with as well, because this seems like the epitome of what just super casual Magic should be. This is the kind of casual Magic commander you should be aiming for if that's what you're trying to get to, at least in my opinion. The next one we have here is having a rule against mass land destruction doesn't make sense in a world where more cards are being printed that weaponize lands. With earthbending coming to a pod near you, how do we feel about reevaluating land destruction? All right, I feel like maybe you didn't read earthbending. Here, let me help you out. So, Any card with Earthbending will put 1/1 counters on a land, and it will become an 0/0 creature. And if that creature dies or is exiled, it immediately comes back to the battlefield. So what you are suggesting is that the way that people counter Earthbending is destroying the lands that will just come back afterwards. In a world where you cast Armageddon on a bunch of Earth-bent lands, then the only player who gets to win is the Earth-bending player. Also, I'm just going to ask you another question. In general, when it comes to mass land destruction, have you considered that the deck that is most willing to accept its lands being destroyed is the one chock full of extra lands and extra ways to get lands? The deck that is most adapted to surviving a mass land wipe like Armageddon is going to be a commander that cares about its lands, because while that could be considered a weakness for the deck, it is also where the deck's focus is. And funnily enough, that's actually the very first thing that was responded here as well. Have we read how Earthbending works? It's something that makes it easier to abuse mass land destruction, not something answered by mass land destruction. Earthbend them, Armageddon, oops, all my lands come back. Yeah, no, that's the thing. I feel like everybody that tries to fight MLD thinks that, oh, the problem is the lands, kill the lands. But no, the lands are the thing that is most likely to come back. Like, are we forgetting that these are the kinds of decks that run Conduit of Worlds and Crucible of Worlds, respectively? Like, these are the kinds of decks that do not give a shit about their lands going away. Hell, there's an entire broken-ass commander built around the idea of its lands going away permanently, put down in the graveyard, like, for good, and that being what the deck is trying to do. So, I don't know. I feel like maybe if you're really worried about mass land denial being what you're going to go for, then you're not really seeing the forest for the trees. Here, let me help out. If you are having a trouble with a land deck, ask yourself the question, what is the card that is hurting me? Is it the lands, or is it the card being enabled by the lands? I just went on to EDHREC and looked up some of the top landfall commanders in Magic the Gathering, and I noticed something with each and every one of them. Omnath, Locus of Rage, Necrobloom, and AC have landfall printed on them. So, how do we handle these commanders? How do we make these commanders cease functioning? It's pretty simple. We just kill the commanders. And while your response may be, yeah, but they have so many lands, they're just going to cast the commander again. Yeah, if the AC deck has to spend 12 of its mana casting its commander again, then it only has 2 or 3 mana available to ramp a little further. If you can keep setting that deck back, it has to keep wasting turns trying to set itself back up. This is true of Necrobloom. This is true of Omnath, Locus of Rage. If we aim our removal not at the lands, but at the cards that are powering up the landfall strategy, like the Conduit of Worlds, like the Omnath, like the Rampaging Baloths, then we're actually using our removal far more respectably. Because if we aim at the lands, then they're just going to get those back. If we aim at the lands for everybody, then we lose access to our best resource in handling our opponent. Our other opponents. Guess what? Your opponents have an onus to stop the landfall player from going away with the game. They have an onus to kill the landfall player. And the best way to get those people to be able to kill the landfall player is for them to have access to their resources. So aim at the landfall player's payoffs for the landfall, not at the lands. If I'm playing AC and you blow up my lands, I just play more lands. I have so many of them. My AC deck ran 45 lands, 5 ways to get lands from the graveyard, and 6 ways to get additional lands on my turn. It chugged through the deck and ran out of basics so fucking fast, you have no idea. It will not matter how many times you knock the lands away from this deck. It is the deck that will pull the lands out faster than your deck can. Instead, get rid of the AC, get rid of the Rampaging Baloths, get rid of the Conduit, get rid of the stuff that's making the landfall deck function, not the lands themselves. The lands are an uphill losing battle, and you don't have enough resources to get rid of them. You probably only have 1 or 2 resources in any deck to get rid of lands, but you probably have 12 or 13 resources that can get rid of creatures, or artifacts, or enchantments. Focus on what your deck can get rid of and make bargains with the other people at the table, because they want to win too. And if the archenemy at the table is the landfall player, then aim your resources at stifling the landfall player. The next one comes from Saifu. I think I'm saying it right. Saifu. How it's Grixis decks and win cons. How do you guys actually win with Grixis? I know there is so many combos, aristocrats out there, but is there something that would fit my current deck list? I have 90/100 as cards, but I'm lacking heavy cards that will win the game for me. I'm on reanimator plan, so I could play just big creatures to lock the game for me. Serenity, Archon of Cruelty, but haven't been enjoying this route too much. Tell me your most fun ways to win. So looking at the Mox field list, we've got plenty of mana rocks, okay. Oh, we're using the Diluvian and Sepulchre Primordial. Nice, nice. So it's looking like our big creatures to summon are Kefka, Sauron. We've got Diluvian Primordial, Sepulchre Primordial. We are missing a few other bombs. Okay, because, yeah, with 10 slots open, man, that land count needs to be inflated. 34 lands is not enough, but... okay, with 10 slots open, ignoring the fact that you need to find room for other lands, let me show you some of my favorites that can go in here. I'm going to suggest 6 cards because the other ones, they really need to be lands. 34s. I don't care. But, okay, so... Kefka Dancing Mad. You've already got one Kefka in there, but this Kefka dodges board wipes and casts things from your opponent's graveyards, which allows you to have access to all kinds of free spells while also burning your opponents. Speaking of burning your opponents, Karavek the Merciless, this thing will end games on its own. Every time your opponent has the audacity to try to play Magic the Gathering, he just kind of boops them real quick on the snoot for an amount of damage. Like, this thing will hurt people. You could also run Lord of Pain as well if you really wanted. Then there's Mind Leech Mass and Rexel the Risen Deep. Both of these, when they deal combat damage to a player, allow you to yank things from either their hand or their graveyard to freely cast. What's the best win con in your deck? The best one you steal from your opponent. Speaking of stealing, Valkavoth Terror Eater is another fantastic one. I adore this card to bits. I'm glad it's no longer 20 bucks. Being able to have a flying lifelink commander that can just destroy everybody's hopes and dreams is wonderful. And if you're in Grixis, you can just run too greedily too deep to reanimate Valgavoth, deal 9 damage to everything on the board, gain 9 times the amount of things on the board in life, and then cast all of those for far less life than you definitely gained. And that's effectively going to win you the game right there. If you want good reanimation targets, like, look no further than Valgavoth. It's very hard to get better than this guy. I'd also run Atali. Like, Atali's just such a good dino. He does his job well. He casts spells for free. Like, what's not to love about this guy? Also, Scion of Darkness. You're already running Sepulchre Primordial. This is mini Sepulchre Primordial. It summons things from the grave. And a bonus, it even has cycling, so we can get it into the grave without having to use any extra cards. It's just kind of a fantastic package. And yeah, everything else, just run more fucking lands. We have another one from Extrovert saying, Muldrotha deck building frustration. I'm trying to build a Muldrotha deck to use cards from my Taval deck to keep up with everyone else's decks. Taval doesn't keep up well anymore. How does a commander that mills your deck out, summons its resources, and also yanks out lands, allowing you to just speed past everybody, not keep up with other decks? What crazy bracket 4 shit are y'all playing in? Anyway, let's continue with this one. I love self-mill, and I don't want to give it up, but it's been a real pain trying to figure out how to build Muldrotha well without completely cutting mill out. I don't want to lose Taval and the self-mill, but even my boyfriend is kind of stumped on how to help. I'm not an experienced deck builder. I usually net deck and change things up from there. Any assistance is welcome. Well, there is a deck listed here, so let's see what we've got. And I already kind of see a problem. So, okay. Our draw package, Greater Good, great for reanimation decks. Guardian Project, great for big creature decks. Mazzolani, always good to see. Gitrog Monster, pretty powerful card, but that seems like it was from the Taval deck more than the Muldrotha deck. I don't know if it does a whole lot in here. Wonder is great for evasion, but I would probably also run Filth. Like, I'm going to be honest. You could easily just drop an Urborg and a Filth in here and have the same power of Wonder, if not better power, than Wonder normally allows for. Your recursion package, okay, Colossal Grave Reaper's good. Living Death is pretty okay if you've got the best things in the world, but, like, there's not a whole lot of reanimation in here. There's Victimize, Reanimate, and Colossal Grave Reaver, and then kinda, sort of, other cards like 6, Life from the Loam, Eternal Witness. These don't reanimate, so you're not running a whole lot of Reanimator to begin with. You've got 18 pieces of ramp. My God in heaven. That is a hefty ramp package, and it seems completely unnecessary because the thing that Reanimator is supposed to be good at is cheating the cost of things. You could run less ramp and run more Reanimator, and your deck would be faster just by having an Animate Dead and a Dance of the Dead in here instead of this hefty ramp package. I don't know what this ramp package is trying to accomplish. This feels like the leftovers of Taval, but there's no payoff in this deck for the ramp. There's a Spore Frog, which is kind of like the classic Muldrotha combo, but I don't run that when I play Muldrotha, only because it feels like it feels kind of like taking the piss, right? You just go like, aha, and here's my Spore Frog. Now I have infinite fogs, except, you know, for the other 2 turns that people can just hit me on. I don't know. But, like, looking at this, I'm seeing an Avenger of Zendikar as a win con, a Multani that can kind of be a win con, but that Multani, again, feels like it's part of the Taval package. You've got some self-mill in here, but, like, what are you trying to reanimate? Because, like, the goal of Muldrotha is to reanimate good things that give you value out of the grave, and I don't see what you're doing with this deck. With Wonder, it feels like it's trying to be a combat deck. With this massive ramp package, it feels like you're trying to be a big mana deck. You have nothing to spend the big mana on. You've got Sir Conrad the Grim and the Mill package here, so it looks like you're doing that to get rid of the stuff in your deck, but, like, the only looter you're running is the Mazzolani, so, like, some of the best methods you have access to for drawing and discarding to fill up your grave with useful stuff are just not being ran in here. You've also got a Field of Ruin here that does not belong in any commander deck except for Group Hug because it gives resources to the 2 people that are not being interacted with. I feel like there's a lot going on in this deck, and it's not leaning far enough into any of these packages. Like, I'm going to be honest, I would put Muldrotha in the 99. I would put Taval up front, and this is already going to be a better deck because you have such a hefty land package, but you also need something that land package is going to work with. So, like, in the world where you stick with Muldrotha, I would try to get some good creatures like Archon of Cruelty and some clones so that Muldrotha can just keep on shitting out stuff. Like, the power of Muldrotha is the ability to get a lot of resources out, but I'm not seeing a lot of permanent resources that aren't creature-based in here, and I'm not seeing enough reanimation to justify the non-creature-based stuff. Muldrotha allows you to yank out a permanent spell of every type, so you can just be like, as an example, if you want to do the big mana thing, you can play an Azusa to get extra lands from your, you know, deck, graveyard, hand, whatever, and then you can use that Muldrotha and say, I'm going to play my enchantment for the turn, Valgavoth Slayer. I'm going to play my artifact for the turn, Darksteel Forge, and then I'm going to play my land for the turn, and it's going to be like a forest. And there, suddenly you've got 3 lands out at once from the graveyard with Muldrotha. You're not leaning into any of what Muldrotha is good at here at all. Like, I feel like picking a lane will help you more than anything. If you want to go Avenger of Zendikar, then lean into the land stuff. Great. That works well with Dretrog Monster. That works well with Taval. But if you want to lean into the mill stuff, then Sir Conrad the Grim needs to be needs to be reinforced by cards like Dreadhound, which really like to see mill and turn it into burn so that you can do stuff with that too. Like, you've gotta, you don't have enough resources in any lane whatsoever. Gerard's in here, but Gerard's kind of the piece that you use in a, you know, Golgari Fling deck. He works okay in Taval, but I wouldn't even run him in full Taval. Like, there just seems to be a lot of cooks in this kitchen, and none of them know what dish they're making right now. I would be happy. Well, hold on. I have a Muldrotha deck. Let me look over it real quick. Okay, so this is my budget Muldrotha deck, and you'll notice that 2 of my board wipes are Oblivion Stone and Nev's Disc, so that I have access to repeated board wiping if I need. I have 4 ways to burn my opponents. One of them is Zamone and Dina. I've also got Gixian Puppeteer and Psychosis Crawler because I'm trying to lean into draw equals burn. My draw package is 16 cards thick because it is not only running cards like Tatioba that see lands being useful for draw, but it's also running Obsessive of Citra, Thought Courier, Vohar, Looter Ilkor. Like, every one of these cards tosses shit in my grave. I have so many ways to toss shit in my grave so that Muldrotha can see what it wants to see. We've got the Spore Frog in here for protection. I thought that I didn't have this in here, but I guess because I was building the budget one, I do have that. A Giant's Amulet, Mirror Shield, all that's here for protection. Remember, these things need to be Lightning Greaves and stuff in a full power deck. And then for ramp, we're leaning really heavy into permanents equal ramp. So like Font of Fertility, Colony Heart Expedition, Spring Bloom Druid, Dawn Treader Elk, Command Sphere, like all of these are permanents that do ramp stuff. They want me to do that. Doc Arlock gets things out of the graveyard easier because it lowers the mana cost of them by 2. I guess technically in my version of the deck, I was only running a Victimize. I feel like if I looked at this deck again, I'd probably run a little more than just the Victimize. I don't know what I was smoking there, but like this Muldrotha deck is very much a control deck. So I'm trying to use Muldrotha to reuse cards like a Cursed Marauder, Caustic Caterpillar, Executioner's Capsule, Rankle, Seal of Doom. Like when I built this, it was entirely a control deck with the attempt to use Muldrotha's ability to say, hey, I would like to play a creature and an artifact and an enchantment from my grave, and all of these are going to blow up your shit. That's what I leaned into. And I still have self-mill in here. Like, there's Satyr Wayfinder, Liliana Death's Majesty, Nyx Weaver, Sidisi, Veta Sidisi, and yours. Like, I feel like the way to make your deck better is by picking what the deck is trying to do. For me, the deck is a control deck with burn being its win condition and beatdown being its secondary win con. Beating an opponent to death when they don't have access to any creatures does win a game after all. So that's where I found success with my Muldrotha deck personally when I built it. Was just picking the lane that I was going in and then leaning super hard into that lane as hard as I could. Your deck currently doesn't have a lane, and I think that's its downfall. And of course, the final question, is it wrong to address personal hygiene to an opponent? No. No. It is not wrong. If my opponent came here and they did not deodorize, that inconveniences me. That inconveniences everybody at the shop. It turns people away from the LGS. Go bathe. Come back. There is a gym next to the shop. I will gladly walk you in there with my Black Card membership so that you can go fucking shower and then come back into the card shop. I will willingly give up one of my deodorants that I keep in the car. I will hand it to you. It is yours forever. So that afterwards, nobody has to deal with yo stank. I am sorry. I just cannot deal with a lack of hygiene. Once upon a time, I could, back when I was a kid playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And anybody around me was just who was around me, but like, as I've gotten older, I just do not have the time nor the spoons to deal with that. Anyway, let's look at the actual discussion here. So I haven't actually done this, but I just wanted to get the vibe from the TCG communities out there. Would you tell someone point blank that their personal hygiene is distracting in a calm but direct manner, Hank Hill style? So, yes, I would, but not in front of everyone. That's probably what I would do. It would be a, hey, just real quick, I want to know, do you have the ability to shower at home? Is there something wrong at home? Address that first. And if not, okay. Just letting you know, your breath, kind of horrible. I can get you a breath mint if you want. Like, I am willing to go do that. I can go to the grocery store real quick and come back. But I cannot be at the table if every time you open your mouth, it smells like last year's anchovies. I'm sorry. Or if the person hasn't bathed, again, I will hand you my Black Card membership. You can go to the gym, you can get showered real quick, you can come back. But like, please, your stank, none of. Please. They said, reason I am asking, there was a person I played against tonight in Pokemon that had horrendously bad breath. I didn't say anything, but it was noticeable no matter how much I tried to change my positions. Also, I sat next to a person playing One Piece that had really bad BO. Hygiene and TCGs unfortunately have a history that go hand in hand. Thoughts? Again, my point is this. We are stewards of our own communities. If you are not willing to help improve your community by improving the hygiene of the people in your community, then you will simply have a community of people who have worse hygiene. I really think card shops should enforce hygiene standards, and I really think that once you are in a card shop, it is out of pure respect for everyone around you that you are willing to engage in proper hygiene practices. Please bathe, please deodorize, please brush your teeth. I swear to God. That's the amount of people who complain about, oh my God, there's not enough girls in the trading card game spaces. Of course there's not, because you all smell like bad pheromones. Looking at the comments in here real quick, only in a bracket 4 pod where everything goes. I hope this is the next bracket update. I have purposely dumped a bunch of mints on the table and said something along the lines of, won't say names, but everyone here needs to take a breath mint. Of course, the person who was the issue spoke up and tried to make an excuse, but just ended up calling himself out. Like, yeah, no, I'm sorry. If I try to go out of my way to not embarrass you, I am doing everything in my power to make this as cordial as possible, and you decide to be a dick about it. That is a you problem. That is a you problem. But I just hate that I'm sitting here 3 hours past the Pokemon tourney and still smelling his breath. This is a tactic for sure. Like, hey, let's all have a pregame mint or something. Good luck. My God. Tonsil stone smell. Honestly, I completely forgot that's the source of most of that smell. Yeah, tonsil stone smell, that can be a huge thing. A breath mint can help solve a lot of that. Brushing your teeth beforehand can help solve a lot of that. What else is in here? Person says, this is the way. I like how you made it a table thing, but didn't single out anybody. Use the 10-second rule. See if it's quickly fixable. Yeah, again, like I do not think you call anything out in a way that like publicly embarrasses a person. I don't think you do that. I think what you do is you either talk to them privately or you do that little tactic with dropping the mints on the table. Something to make sure that everybody can be on the board of being, you know, better with their hygiene. There are other comments here about pulling them aside and asking if they were aware of it is almost always a good option. Yeah, okay. So I'm glad to see that a lot of the Magic the Gathering community is on the same page here. Do not publicly embarrass a person, but certainly give them the ability to solve the problem ASAP. That will definitely help. Secondary suggestion, maybe make sure that your LGS sells those little itty-bitty travel deodorants. Like, hey, I'll hand you $2. You can go get one of those little itty-bitty travel deodorants. You don't even have to leave the store. Just, you got to make sure this smell leaves me forevermore. That's all I'm asking. And that does it for everything here. Maybe this video is a bit on the long side, but I wanted to cover each of these in as much depth as I could. None of them seemed like, except for like the deck fixes, seemed like they should take so much time that an entire video needed to be dedicated to them, but I did want to do my due diligence here. Let me know what y'all thought in the comment section below. I would love to do more of these like omnibus style responses in the future. And yeah, just let me know what you would do in the situation where somebody's hygiene was just severely lacking. I'd really like to know.